This video will introduce the sensitivity analyzer, which is one of our COM applications that we developed on top of the new COM API that was introduced with the 2012 SR1 release. And this tool is useful in that it will help users understand the cost impact of a series of incremental changes to a single input parameter, and it will allow them to look at the output, any output for a given project. The application is located up on DocuServe in this directory here. You'll need to drag it down to your desktop, and then you could open it up. And it's a blank sheet. However, up in the add-ins section, you'll see a true planning drop down. Now this will work with 2012 SR1. It will not work with the prior releases of true planning because the old releases don't have the COM API. So there are two different ways to look at this. The sensitivity of inputs. The first one is just looking at a cost object by itself. You can do analysis to kind of learn the models, and it's not part of a project. It's just like taking a software component and starting to modify inputs to look at the outputs. And the second mode is the ability to analyze a project input. Opening a project, selecting a cost object and input the change, and then you'll be able to view the sensitivity of that input on whatever output you want to look at. So the first thing I'll show is this first mode, the analyze input. When you click it, it launches this form, and this form it asks you a series of questions. I'm going to do a demo on like a hardware component. So the first thing you need to do is select your cost object, and then what input do you want to change. I'm just going to look at varying the number of production units, and then we could look at the unit production cost and how the learning effect takes how the learning effect affects cost. So I'm going to vary the number of production units from 30 to 130, and I'll just run it for 10 iterations. You can see the cost effect with escalation on or off. And you can look at up to 3 different outputs, and for each output you can choose estimated cost or labor requirement or any of the activities. These are all the activity costs, and it also has all of the metrics available for that component. So I'm going to look at unit production cost. And we could run this. These inputs on the right-hand side are sort of static inputs to kind of define the situation. In other words, operating spec. You could run this whole regression for a certain operating spec with the weight of structure and something that is electronic. And you can do deployment and by specifying the number of systems you want to deploy and how many years you want to deploy them. You can't spread anything. It's an automatic spread, meaning that it would be uniform. So I'm going to click Analyze, and it's going to go through 10 iterations of varying the number of production units, and it's going to plot me a graph of each run, and you can see the learning effect of the cost by the more production units I build, the lower the unit production cost. And up top, for each iteration, it will plot the input and the output that you chose. If there was a second output or a third output, you'd see them in column D and E. The other thing I'll demonstrate is the other mode where I could actually analyze a project input on an existing project. So if I choose Analyze Project Input, I get a different form where I'm going to pull up a project. When I load the project, it's going to load the PBS. In this screen here, I can click on any of these or the cost objects. For each cost object, it'll show you the current set of inputs. So I'm going to select weight of structure. So I'm taking the fuselage. I'm going to vary the weight of structure on the fuselage from 25,000 to its current value, and I'll do that for 10 iterations. Now, unlike the analyze input on a single cost object from what I showed you before, this one, since it's a project, we can look at the costs on the fuselage, or we could look at the costs of its parent assembly or system. In this case, I'll take a look at the system cost object, and you could look at up to 3 outputs simultaneously. I'll just look at this drop-down list shows the estimated cost, the labor requirement of the entire project, and any activities on the cost object that I'm on, which is a system cost object. It'll also show, so if you chose one of these activities, it would show the activity cost. Below that is metrics, and you could look at any metrics as well. So I'm going to look at the production cost, and I'll run this. So what it's doing is it's changing an input, calculating, getting a new output value, changing the input, calculating, getting a new output cost. So if I move this aside, you could see the sensitivity of the weight of structure of the fuselage when I vary the weight from 25,000 to 29,000 pounds. And you could look at the cost impact. It varies between 15 billion and 14 billion dollars. So it's a kind of a good way to look at what you can do with cost savings by trying to get the fuselage weight down. One of the known issues with this, some of you might come across, is that if you have 2 cost objects in the tree that have the same exact name, you might get unpredictable results. It might go for the wrong cost object when you're looking at the output or varying the input. The other thing is sometimes if you're on this chart, you won't be able to see the menu item, the add-ins. You have to kind of click off the chart, and then you'll be back to the add-ins, and that's it.